Okay, so I'm back. This is LeiLani Cauthen, your host. I'm glad to have you guys with us today. And I'm going to ask, and I'm going to be sharing here shortly some stuff on motivation. But I want to talk first with Brandon Levine, who's the manager of sales development at ID Automation, because there's another trend coming up in the market, and I want to make sure I'm also sharing my correct screen. Um, Going back to the right screen, and then we're going to talk about motivation. So Brandon, are you on the line? I'm making sure I can hear you.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. All right, so I do automation. There's a new thing happening, identity infused education in the market. And I'm just putting your logo up right now on the screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, good. It's good to have you. So identity infused automation is a new way to think about how teachers are going to start and administrations are going to start being able to individualize learning, because the identity itself has encapsulated traits of the student. So it's not like, so in the old world there was just a roster, right? And the new world with what you guys are doing is the ability to wrap around that individual student's identity more information, so that they can get the right resources, they can be assigned into the right classes, they're accumulating more of things to their own identity. So can you sort of walk me through that a little bit? Because I think this is something that's developing in the market that's a big deal that everybody needs to know about.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, it's an honor to be here. LeiLani, thanks. You're doing a great job hosting and presenting. Once again, my name is Brandon Levine. I'm based here out of Houston, Texas, where we are headquartered here, Identity Automation. But yeah, as you mentioned, LeiLani, where we're seeing, the industry go as well as the K-12 space, 2020 threw a curveball, right? We really saw the educational equity gap. So as we were thinking about ways that's going to change, it led to what you said previously. So some of the things that we want to be focusing on is really personalizing the learning experience for the individual, but it starts with the identity, right, of each, whether it's the student, the teacher, or the staff as well. So that's where rap identity comes into place. Some of the areas where we're going to focus on, it really starts with the life cycle of that identity. So provisioning that user. We're seeing a lot of school districts today manage that manually, whether it's through scripting or manual processes. We want to have the ability to automate that process in order to deliver a learning experience. Can everyone see my screen? I didn't even
Yeah, I
ask
can
that.
see your screen, and I'm going to stop you just to make sure you fully define provisioning. This is like a technical term, not everybody knows. It means providing the right thing to the right person at the right time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. 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 Awesome. Yeah. And if anyone have any questions or anything, feel free to chime in. I know I have just a few minutes. But with that, right, that poses the next concern, right? Many can agree. Last year, we saw a lot of the school districts implement a one-to-one initiative, right? Whether it was with Chromebooks or other different laptops. In order to personalize that experience, right, it starts with provisioning or giving the right student the right access at the right time of that user. So with that, we're also able to help SSO into any web application through that as well. Something that I'm really passionate about here is the privacy pledge. Many may know, but Thursday is National Data Privacy Day. If you didn't know that, but that is something that we are committed to as well. Is making sure that we are keeping the identity and the privacy of that student at the core of everything that we do. Let's see, and one more last part in regards to that is with personalizing that experience is really about understanding that everyone cannot remember their password, right? So if you notice with the younger students as well as with special needs students, we want to give different methods to allow them to log in and out and authenticate and prove that they are who they say that they are. So we can accomplish that with things like QR code, pictograph. We've seen that to be very effective with many school districts of all sizes to help personalize and tailor that learning experience for them.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on that, Brad. It's so funny because I always find it's, you know, little kids have actually better memory than adults, for their passwords thing. It's just very, very funny. I forget passwords all the time, but I could teach a 5-year-old like all the passwords, but not necessarily which ones go with which thing. Is that your experience? Yeah.
I agree, absolutely. And another thing, you brought up a good point, right, in regards to passwords. A lot of people, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of talking about security and things like that, but I'm really passionate about this. But when it comes to passwords, oftentimes people, excluding like the younger students, right, whether it's your social media passwords or anything for your email, it's typically the same, right? Something that we believe that we've seen effective is more of a password reset versus a password recovery, right? We feel that, school districts, and we see a lot of IT departments go this route as well in regards to resetting the password versus displaying it by recovering it, right? And the reasons for that, right, is you want to make sure that they're not repeating the passwords over and over, right? And that it brings all different types of security concerns. But you want to personalize it based on the identity and their role, right? So, for instance, you may require a teacher or an educator to have a longer password with special characters. You may have a 10th grader, right, have it at 6 digits, right? So you really want to personalize it based on their role and their title, just to make sure that security is at the core of anything that you're doing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the fact that the real conversation really isn't about single sign-on only. What you guys are really what you brought to the conversation is an idea that this hybrid logistics thing is real. People are worried about the change in the space and time. And so the ability to wrap something into the identity itself is the difference between a sort of monolithic assign based on roster. And so it's fairly static, and the ability to have a non-static sort of dynamic changing provision to the student based on their own personal identity. So that's the point where we diverge from the old way, because we're now no longer requiring an adult intervention on every single assignment of resource, or a teacher to sort of get involved, like take this away from this student, give this to that student. We're now doing it in what I've been told is called the sovereign identity. The individual identity now is sovereign, and it allows itself to navigate. I think that this is a quantum leap in the understanding of where education can go, because once your mind grasps the identity is itself its own little thing moving around the matrix, you can start to reconstruct in your mind how you structure education. And I think that that's a big deal. And I'm hoping a lot of people grasp that particular concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so good. Well, that was a big mouthful. So thank you for being with us today. We're really excited about what you're doing, and we want to have like 50 intellectual conversations about it every week with you guys about where this is going, and just looking at every little nook and cranny of what it means. Because there's a lot of schools and districts and teachers out there that are really grasping for how do we be, like Marita was just talking about. It's really a moment where everybody has some introspection, as well as they're grasping for where is this going. And I think you guys have a bead on a major portion of where it's going. I mean, there's a lot of other companies that are in the SSO space, but not in this space. So proud of all of them. Awesome work for everybody. But I'm excited too about what it means for the software companies, because I think the backwards engineering into like Scholastic and Achieve 3000 and the other companies that are doing this spectacular courseware, it also means that the things that they can do in development in the future are deeper for the individual student. So that's kind of cool. So it's going to be changing forever from here on out, is what I'm saying.
It's forever changing, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time to be alive. Well, good. Well, thanks for joining us. It's good to have you. Say hi to the rest of the crew.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So I'm going to take the screen back.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for joining us. All right. So we're over to the motivation part of what we're going to talk about now. All right. So talking about motivation, we talked a little bit about this with Marita, but I want to share with you guys some data that we learned as a learning council on motivation. We had Dr. Cheryl Abshire get involved with talking about the pieces out of Richard Lavoie's book, The Motivation Breakthrough. And I'm going to walk you through how the Learning Council tied that into what's going on with EdTech, because there was some real gems in Richard Lavoie's book, if you can still buy it online. But it starts with the fact that we were concerned about kids not being motivated, huge loss of achievement all over the country, the loss of enrollment, as I'm showing again in this slide, we're now at 33.6%. So we looked in how the motivation forces really work. There's 8 of them. Students are motivated by their own gregariousness. They're just super friendly. They're motivated by having their own autonomy and feeling like they're in charge of themselves. Having status, big deal for kids. Being inquisitive, wanting to know things, you know, the big why word. Being motivated by aggression. They're sort of approaching life from a wanting to sort of be aggressive about it and figure things out and take over parts. A lot of people are motivated this way. It's not a negative. It's actually kind of a positive. And then the power motivated individual who wants to control things. They want to be in control and have a sense that they're empowered. And then students motivated by recognition. And then students motivated by affiliation. They want to be part of groups. They want to be, not alone in their own learning. So there's a couple of things that you can notice right away that happened with the pandemic from these 8 forces. The kids that are gregarious and the kids that are motivated by affiliation or power aggression were unable to be easily motivated when they're distant and they're only on screen. So a little bit about what Marita was saying is listen and empower, giving students the mic, giving students on-camera presence so that they can feel like they're empowered and affiliated with other people. That's a really big deal. So in terms of the secrets of motivation, these are the 6 Ps of how to be motivated with regards to what I'm going to show you next about technology. So projects motivate those autonomous or inquisitive children. So that's one thing you need to be doing now in the hybrid environment. And then people motivate the gregarious or affiliation-driven child. This is why the video-based learning is still important. You do need to get kids together on screen. Sometimes you need to get them together just to be with each other, right? Maybe just overseen, but they're having a discussion on their own. Praise motivates that status, recognition, or affiliation-driven child. Prizes motivate the status, recognition, affiliation, or power-driven child. Prestige motivates those autonomous, status, aggressive, or power-driven children. And then power motivates that power, autonomous, or aggressive child. So there's different ways you can do this in a hybrid environment, and I want to show them to you. That's the purpose of this motivation talk. But there's one really important rule. Don't share your observations or label those kids. If you've observed a kid is motivated by a sense of power, like they always want to be the one leading the small group or whole group, they always want to be the one who gets to help you hand out something when they're actually in class, or however they're sort of making it known that they're interested in that. You don't want to tell them that. That would be like a big no-no. So that's the one thing I'm going to give you that caveat. So here's the thing. Tech can motivate when it's done well. You can let tech do a lot of motivation in hybrid learning. It is spectacularly scripted when it's professional grade. It's colorful. I mean, researchers in a lot of these companies actually research what colors to use, how to format the screen to be most applicable to what age group. Like you'll notice with the software designed for the primary kids, it has really big fat buttons so that the low fat fingers can poke on the buttons easier. It'll have certain color spectrum. which is also a clue to the fact that the colors used and the finiteness of buttons and the art of how you navigate is different for the older kids, because if they sort of feel like it's babyish, they don't want to do it if they're teenagers, trust me. So there's a whole thing about how tech motivates that if you just sort of open your eyes and you start looking at the software you're using, you'll understand what I'm saying is the appeal to the mind of the student to navigate and be involved with it has a lot of variation based on age and also motivation. So here's one way that you can let tech get involved with the projects as a motivation for those autonomous or inquisitive children. Scribble is one example. There's many examples. Achieve is an example of how they have project sort of understanding or in and around, and Scholastic as well in their software. You can use robotics, AR, VR systems, and anything you provide digitally that is discovery-based learning is going to be project-oriented. And that might be just letting kids be unleashed inside any sort of software you're using. Another way you can let tech do it is for the people-motivated child, you can use, Marita was talking about this, portfolio building, which might be in an LMS, it might be an app. It might be like animation building, like what Plotagon does. It might be communication, like within No Story, any social media site, anything that's planned as a student virtual conference call, even without the teacher's presence, so that they can feel like they're being with other people. And then your power motivated student would love to set this up with a study hour. It's like, so they get to run the study hour and be responsible for one of those. Those are all ways you motivate students remotely now. Another way that you can motivate is with prestige for the autonomous, status, aggressive, or power-driven child. And that's by using crafted courseware, kind of like Scholastic, like they were just showing you in the video. And I know probably Dana is still on the line. Hi, Dana. To use that crafted courseware that's built for high engagement, you can just see from the screenshot, this student is very engaged. They're looking at an animated learning tool that is, it's not flat text on a screen. It's not just a talking head. It's actually something that they can physically be engaged with, limitedly. It's still digital, but it's physical when they get to poke on buttons and experience little showers of sparks or fireworks on the screen, rewarding them for what they've done in progress. Another way is praise and prizes to motivate that status recognition or affiliation-driven child. So that's when the software shows the student their own progress and rewards them in some sort of progress report, an emblem, indication, little gold stars, that they've achieved something. Now, we all know that praise can be overdone in the classroom. Sometimes it's proper not to overpraise a student, especially if it makes other students feel underpraised. It's better that they feel like they've earned it for real for what they've done. But in software, it's very, around that individual student's achievement. So it makes you feel like, oh, good, I got something done. And many coursewares, and particularly the reading platforms, are doing that validation, and then they take back the teacher to also acknowledge the student has done that and be gated forward to the next level of the software. Another way you can let tech do it is what Lightspeed, we showed you this earlier. Students are motivated for what around power, being autonomous or aggressive, get to use little handsets to actually interact and communicate, and they feel like, okay, I'm empowered now, in classrooms where they all have to be 6 feet apart and plastic between them and masks. So that ability to use that type of technology feels like, oh, I've been empowered, I'm important today. And also being fully trained in their office suites so they can use the chat functions, demonstrate their skills, give feedback. Those are all important. Another way you can let tech do it on the horizon are things like AI avatar-based training. Alilo's come out with one that's been really popular in the military training for a long time, and now schools are really into this, There's a new article on our site about Alilo. We had 4 districts do a full review. And then also hybrid logistics that's forthcoming. So when you let tech do it, you're basically saying as a school and as an individual teacher that you're willing to give up some of your distribution of the knowledge to something that does it for you, so that your attention can be more on the human aspects of student interaction. Okay, I'm just checking chat. And so the other thing to say is that the only effective long-term motivator of human behavior is success. So you need students to feel like they're succeeding no matter where they're at in time or space, and that they're experiencing, as they experience success in academics, they become increasingly more motivated. This is a serious issue that we're talking about. We're not trying to gloss over it. Loss of achievement is about at the 50% mark in the nation right now. It's not small. So I'm not trying to gloss over it. I'm just saying, let's be simple with what we have to do. We have to motivate, because kids feel like they're being successful. They're not behind, they're catching up, that kind of thing. So the real challenge you have as educators is to let tech do some of the work. It's hard to swallow to say, okay, well, this is doing the teaching. Well, not really. You're guiding the students, and then you're intervening in appropriate moments. But you can let tech motivate students because it's colorful, it's interactive, it's doing things. And then make sure you're trying to use the appropriate tech for the individual student. And quite frankly, sometimes that isn't a piece of tech, it's the technology of knowing how humans work. And most teachers need to use that right now more than anything else. So that human social interaction is super important.